Hey guys, it's Al, and welcome back to the channel. I actually wanted to follow up on the last video I did regarding my year-long mission in the middle of COVID into Skid Row, Los Angeles with the homeless population. And instead of just focusing on the areas of what I saw and what was kind of out of alignment and stuff like that, I wanted to focus more on what it means to be called by the divine or God or Allah or whoever you believe in, and what it is to respond to that call and earnestness and to walk forward in divine light, and how it's not typically the most glamorous experience, but that it's always worthwhile. And for many of you, it will be either a year-long assignment, or it can be up to 2 years typically, but it might be longer depending on what you're calling it, what your purpose is in life. And so what I first wanted to do to start off with setting the tone properly was discuss what it is to be of service to humanity and the collective at large. And so let's begin with the definition of humanitarian, right? Because that's typically what most of us are somehow involved in when we're working with the divine, is something that has to do with humanitarian effort or global concern or the collective and whatnot. So humanitarian is defined as concerned with seeking to promote human welfare. And so the thing about that is that you're basically seeking, I mean, it's self-explanatory, but just to make it even clearer, essentially your priority is in helping humanity somehow rise. And so with Ascension, and those of you who believe in the collective or are now spiritual, in spiritual circles or on the mountain, you understand that we're actually talking about raising the vibration of humanity, because things are so down and so just so depressed, and everybody's so hateful and angry and all that stuff that it's just getting to a point where it's a do or die situation for the race. And so many of us are being called by God in order to step forward. And the first thing I'm going to say about that is that it requires two things. One is to understand that courage begins the moment that you stop thinking of yourself, right? That is when it begins. And so if you're still in an egoish state, then you probably won't step forward, because a spiritual calling, when you get called by God, they're asking you to go into action. They're asking, well, I say they, but it's he, it, or her. I just don't know how you guys perceive it, but it's asking you to actually do something physical, not to sit behind a desk or to just make comments, but to actually step forward and lead your people out of, whatever your assignment is, to lead that grouping into the light, right? And so it's very important to understand that courage begins the moment you stop being self-centered, right? That's the big thing. Otherwise, you're just being brave. But courage is the moment when you start to act on behalf of the total sum of us. So courage is defined as the ability to do something that frightens one, or, and this is the one that I'm thinking most of you who are being called now are going to find more interesting, strength in the face of pain or grief. So many of you who are in a situation where you are being called by God to step forward and help humanity and the collective at this time are people who have really big callings. You have huge hearts, and you have been hurt, and you have survived what most people couldn't even fathom. But you're being tasked now to step into putting what you've learned into practical use, because you are on your path to reward season, if you will. But it's not something that you focused on. You're not materialistic. You're not egoish. You are someone who literally has risen above that, and you're now stepping in on behalf of like the Father energy and the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost type of environment. You are being guided by that inner higher self that is asking you to do something for humanity that is outside of just what's best for you. And so that type of courage is pretty specific. And so many of you, I believe, that are going to be listening or seeing this at some point are those who the divine finds to be worthy and capable of that type of leadership. So we're talking now about spiritual leadership. And so with the changing of tides and the changing of the guards that is going on currently with the collective, as you can see, so many things are toppling down. And I went into just a couple places in the last post regarding how many things just fell apart. And I'm going to go into even more in depth, but from a more graceful standpoint at the end of this video. But for now, let's just focus on what we're talking about. And so you're being tasked with stepping out of your comfort zone and getting away from the desk. Instead of just commenting, you're going to go and you're going to do something in action. And you're going to live an experience that helps you understand the truth of humanity and what it is to be whatever your task is. Like for me, I made the divine laugh the other day, because I was like, well, if you want to know, if you ever need somebody who was molested by a guy who emulated Jesus Christ and ended up in a cult by the time he was 12 and ended up in child enslavement and then ended up losing his mom and then ended up an orphaned with like that wounded orphan scenario that they got going on in astrology, and then ended up on the streets, drug addicted, a sex addict, and only to then end up called by God to step forward as a homeless person and spend a year in the middle of COVID-19. I'm your boy. And the divine just started cracking up. So, but the task was bigger than I could. I mean, let me tell you something. The divine has been asking me to do this for since 2019 was been preparing me. And it was like, I'm really good at the studious part. And so many of you probably fall into this category. You're like really, really, like once you end up following the Easter eggs away from like the organized structure, and you start to go, oh, that egg leads here, and that goes here, and then there's theosophy, and then there's this, and there's astrology, and then there's sacred geometry, and it starts to become this huge freaking puzzle that's just amazing to get into, right? Like you're really becoming one with the divine. And so as you learn more and more about the divine, you become more in love with the divine, and you understand you're a child of God, and so now you're walking with the divine. And you start to see the hypocrisy, and once you see the hypocrisy, you can't turn away. Now you're like looking dead at it, and you're like, oh, this is not going to fly with me, as you guys saw in the last post with me. But the point is that as you do that, you become more and more excited, and then there comes a point when you are done with this theory. You have to step into the practical side of humanity, of what your endeavor is. You want to be a king or a queen, or you want to be an emperor and empress. And if you want to be an emperor and empresses, then you have to lead your people by being of your people. So you have to go through it, and you have to experience, and you have to feel, and you have to, and then you have to overcome it. And then when you step above it, you end up kind of like what they say is the king of cups, which is non-emotional. But you feel everything. You just have learned to compartmentalize it in a way that's healthy, but you still acknowledge it that you've been there. No one can take that away from you. And that's what a lot of you are receiving those calls right now from the divine, where God's saying, I need you right now. Spiritual leadership is kind of crumbling at the moment because everybody's running for the hills over this thing going on over here, which I got into last time. But you understand that you work for me and you're totally protected. So I need you to step forward now and shine your light and be the light. And instead of just being the light, you are now the mountain. I need you to become the mountain that others are going to climb as beacons. And so you're like, oh, that's so exciting. But then when you actually get the assignment, you're like, I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be like, I don't want to have to deal with HIV patients all the time. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with slavery. I don't want to deal with enslavement. I don't want to deal with child trafficking. I don't want to. Who are you serving? Are you serving yourself or are you serving God? And so that's what I wanted to do this video on, is the fact that at some point it's no longer comfortable and it's not fun. It's not cute. You cry, you get very emotional. It breaks you and then rebuilds you and then breaks you and then rebuilds you and then breaks you and rebuilds you, because it's no longer about you, remember? Courage is the moment when you stop thinking of yourself, right? That's bravery, when you're all about, oh, I can handle myself, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's just machismo ego, right? But now we're talking about courage, which is actually stepping on behalf of humanity. So it's very important to keep that in mind, because we seem to have this, at least I did. I'm speaking from personal experience. I had this I'm a bit of a princess, I've said that before. And I expected it to be a little bit more glamorous, and to be honest with you, it's anything but glamorous. I kept hearing Mother Teresa and Nelson Mandela, and I'm like, I am not doing that. And the divine's like, no, you're doing something else. And then I ended up in the middle of Skid Row in Los Angeles, and I held my own. But just know that it's not going to be. The divine knows you better than you know yourself right now. And those of us who are being called right now, or what I call the reborn, we are souls that typically, a lot of us are even masters that are returning and that have to go through a period of forsakenness, right? And so we have led lives that are just horrendous and really hard, but we're not victims, and we're all about life, and we're still like marching forward, but you're still, so you still carry the baggage. And so this process, when you get called by the divine, is to let go of the charge. And that's a whole different ballgame, right? Like when we sit through, we go, okay, I worked through it up here. Your heart hasn't. You know what I mean? Like your heart and your head, typically, especially if you're a masculine, is very disconnected. And then if you're feminine, usually the heart leads and the head is disconnected. And so one usually tugs a little bit more. That's not like, I don't mean to be like sweeping generalizations, but I'm just going by what most people would agree, okay? Remember, there's masculine toxicity and there's feminine toxicity, and we'll get into that in the later posts. But for now, since I'm finishing this mission and I want to get everybody on the same page, I just wanted to speak. I'm looking at my notes, sorry. But I'm looking at the notes, so I'm just making sure I go over it. So you can go either way with that, but the point is that we tend to have one heavier and more in leadership than the other, and so as they come into balance, that's what you're doing on mission. But as it happens, you have to at some point release the energy of what you've been carrying, and so many of us are people who have been hookers, have been drug addicts, have been people who have been beaten, abused, molested, people that have really been hurt, because the divine has something way bigger in mind for us. We're going to lead the people of the earth to Christ, right? And so it doesn't have to be Christ. It could be Allah. It could be God, whatever you call it, the Messiah, whatever you want to call it, because there's a big thing between Christ and the Messiah, and I'm not going to get into that whole religious indoctrination thing. But y'all know what I mean. The point is, we let that go. We let all of the dogma, we let go of all the BS, all of the hatred, all of the homophobia, all of the sexism, we let that go. And now what we're doing is we're stepping into acting on behalf of a higher power. And that higher power is about unity, about love, about justice, about equality, about peace. And so understanding that better prepares us all, right? So what is a spiritual mission? It is walking with Christ. This is my own definition of what it is to a spiritual mission. And it is walking with Christ in your purpose. That is my definition of what that means. When you go on spiritual mission, you are walking with Christ in your purpose. And so usually that comes as a result of a spiritual calling, which is a summons from God to practice spiritual gifts such as teaching, preaching, or prophesizing. Now, the word prophesizing has been vilified by many people because the whole thing, everybody's like, oh, this is judgment, there's going to be a false prophet, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me put it to you this way, and I can't stress this enough. I'm not going after anybody when I say this, and I'm going to trigger you right now, but just deal with it. Christ paid for the sins of humanity. That's how he arose. He went from Jesus Christ to Christ in that scenario because of the fact that he did. He stepped into the Father role. He went from Son to Father. Okay. When he returns on the second coming, is he coming back as that Christ? No, he's coming back as the Antichrist. He's coming back as the Christ opposite. He's coming to pass judgment. Now, I'm not saying that he's the devil. I'm saying that as far as terminology is concerned, you can't split hairs on this one. Christ paid for the sins of humanity. The Christ in the second coming is the same person, but it's coming to pass judgment. So it's the Antichrist of what we believe. Not the same thing as the devil or all of that other stuff that is in the Bible. That's a whole separate topic. But I'm just getting you guys, I'm helping you understand that there's a lot of blockage that happens with terminology and turning of phrases to kind of make you go. Remember, Christ is about uniting humanity. It's not about dividing humanity. A house divided shall fall, and that's what we're seeing. So the divine is asking us to unite our planet and bring it forward in a humanitarian effort and a humanitarian aid. And so we're going to be doing a lot of really awesome, incredible stuff. But what we're trying to do is get rid of anything that breaks that down, right? So we're not saying, I'm not saying that the Antichrist is like the devil. That's a negative energy, right? That's not what we're talking about. But to be specific, we can't deny the fact that he's not coming to pay for our sins again. He's coming to make humanity pay for his sins. So it's the anti-version of that. It's like the anti-gravity. It's the flip of that. And so it's important to understand that, because I don't want to ever hear anybody tell me, of all freaking people, that I'm like speaking like in tongues or speaking on the devil's bow and look at you and smack your cow. Because I'd be like, no, I walk with Christ. And so I'm just preparing you for the fact that, he's not coming to give you all googly eyes and say, oh, well done. He's coming to pass judgment. And that's one of the things about those of you walking in spiritual mission right now, is that you have to understand that if you can't make people change who they are, you can't make them evolve, you can't make them stop being homophobic, even though we know God would never allow that. And so they're basically putting themselves in serious danger of going to HE double hockey sticks. We can't make them change it. Just like we know that God would never sit there and subjugate women and say, oh, you're second-class citizens, you belong to men. Hell to the no. We know this stuff, but you can't make people understand that. And so the more that we unite on separating the divisive aspects to it, the more that you're aligning with your mission, because you're going to get so much thrown at you depending on what your calling is, right? So just be aware that we're trying to unite. And so when you get the calling, it is a summons from God to practice spiritual gifts, teaching, preaching, or prophesizing. So a prophet is just someone who the divine speaks through and tells us what's to come. That's my own interpretation of that. Preaching is when you speak from a pillar to your community. That is different from, I'm not talking about the pious version, because when people are pious, then they get on their soapbox and they say, well, I know the answer because I am the divine God. No, see, you're already an ego. The divine speaks to the humble. doesn't speak to the egoish. The divine will speak through the humble and the people who are worthy. So always be cautious of the fact that when you stand on a soapbox and you have your nose up at people, then you can never be of service to the divine. You won't be called to mission. And then there's teaching. Now, teaching for me is a big deal. As you guys know, that's my calling. But mine is I had to walk through the fire, right? And so when you step onto that spiritual mission, when you are walking with the divine in your purpose, understand that you will be challenged, and it's going to suck. A lot of times it's not going to be the most pleasant thing, but it will be the best thing you've ever done. There was a man, when I finished my mission here, now that I'm done and I'm moving on, now that I can travel around the country and do fun and exciting stuff, I don't know what the opportunities are just yet. The divine's like, it's a surprise. I'm like, okay. I guess it has other people involved, and I'm all about partnership now because I've lived my whole life, by myself, and now the divine's kind of opening it up because the mission is over, and so now I get to experience new and fun stuff, and I can't wait. But having said that, when I was on mission, I was unique. I was the wild card, and when I say that is that there are people who are heavily Catholic, which I love, right? There are very, very heavily Catholic or Baptist people who are here to reform the way that we look at that, because instead of being divisive, they're being called to unite their tribes. And so same with Judaism and all that stuff. So a lot of you are going to be stepping into those missions. But for me, I was the wild horse. I was the one that could not be tamed. And I was the one who was like, I questioned everything, and the divine and I have had some very interesting arguments over the past, not arguments, but I would say debates, because I understood dogma and I understood where we were going, but I didn't understand some of the inner dynamics between the two. Like, I can't understand how someone who represents the light of God in a church is protecting child molesters. And I couldn't understand why we were allowing women to be subjugated by men. And so there was all of these things that I personally had to go up against the divine. Now, it wasn't the divine saying like anything that was defending it, but I had to step into asking those tough questions, right? And it came from the fact that I am so strong. Like I've said it from the beginning. You that are going into mission, you've overcome some stuff that people cannot understand. Like when I was raped by the molester who emulated Jesus Christ. That is so unique and so odd that, that's so bizarre that I would now be speaking from a position of teaching about faith, because if anything, that would trigger somebody. And we're going to get into a whole thing about why they target women who have children, specifically single women. They target you for specific reasons, but we're going to do that whole dark topic at a later time. It has to do with firstborn males and firstborn females, and especially if women or they're here, men that they're looking for men who have been raped and women who are willful. That's what it was phrased to me as. Okay. So it's dark, right? But we're not going to get into that. We're going to keep this upbeat. But you see what I'm saying? So you have overcome that stuff, and now you're stepping forward with that platform. But with me, then I went into a cult, and then I was a child slave, and then I couldn't get out without losing my family, and then there was like this whole thing. But notice that there's no victimization here. It's all anything. It made me stronger, and it made me unstoppable. It made me fearless. And so I always think of like Sarah Michelle Gellar dressed as Daphne and Scooby-Doo going, "Are you going to be fearless?" And Scooby going, "Roar." It's like, hello, me. But you're going to be challenged. And so when you step into it, it's usually best to ask the hard questions before you go out on mission. Because a spiritual calling is the assumption that I would give you, or that I would lead you to understand, is that if the divine is calling you, not only do you answer the call, but you ask questions first so that you're not blindsided. Because if I hadn't asked those tough questions, the moment that I was pushed into the Union Rescue Mission and the divine said to me, "You are on my payroll, but understand that you are protected, but the moment that you think that you're not, you're on your own," if I would not have been prepared, that would have thrown me, and I would have probably gotten killed or beaten up or something. But opportunity met preparation, right? And so now that my mission's over, now that experience and those blessings that I thought were curses now transforms me into a contender for whatever is next, right? I'm gotta go with the flow. I'm not worried about what's coming. I just know that it's now, right? Like because when you're done with your spiritual mission and you get luggage to go with it, and you're like, "Oh, that's an interesting gift." And it's just confirmation after confirmation. So everything's super synchronized this week, right? So, but it goes to the spiritual gifts that I have, which is I have an intuition that is unstoppable. I have literally navigated a year on spiritual mission without no money, without any contact, without any money, without any resources, any friends to rely on. Everybody that said they were going to be there totally let me down. And so it's one of those things, like, I did it without any help. I didn't have any general relief. I didn't have any, all I had was food stamps, but that didn't come until August. So like for 7 months I had nothing. That's not boasting. I'm just telling you what it is to have spiritual gifts, because it's an intuition that is unrivaled, right? I'm so unique that I could probably, like, I really have a thing for UNHCR. I really have a thing for humanitarian organizations, and I really would like to do something international. Like, that's where my calling is at. But I had put my idea out there into the universe, and I've approached some people. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, I know that divine has something in mind for me specifically. And so when the person who I'm supposed to be working with understands and sees that, then everything goes tick, 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 right? Like, everything just falls in line. So until then, you just have to have faith. And that's what this is all about. Do you have the faith? Because when you're on mission, just so you know, God's not answering your phone calls most of the time. You are having to rely on yourself. But your guides are always there. And so it's super important. I don't care how Catholic you are, how Jewish you are, to understand that you are never alone. You always have angels or guides with you. Okay? So it's super important for us to understand that, because if you don't have that resources, then, like, an atheist won't ever get a phone call from the divine. Not because he doesn't think that they can do it, because they would get into a situation where they would think that they have no options, and they would never get out of it. That's where you lose faith. But we are not of that cloth. We're children of God. So we understand that we have a higher purpose, and so now we're walking in it. But you have to understand that you're never, ever alone. And especially when you go on mission, typically you will notice that if you follow your intuition, that you will be drawn, and you will end up being driven, is the word, towards people of like minds that you would have never thought were of like minds with you. You see what I'm saying? And so when you trust your intuition, you start to then befriend, like I did, like with the homeless people, maids. I was just talking to everybody, chat. Because I just figured that there's no difference between you and I. There's no one better than each other. You know what I mean? No one is better or less than anyone else. That is an egoish, elitist thing that it just shows that you're not anywhere near the mountain. You're like at the base going, hey, you want this rope? Sure. You know what I mean? Like, you're not, but anyway, I'm digressing. So let's move on. It's a digression. So, when I answered the call, I just want to be very clear. I kicked and screamed, and I didn't want to do it. But the way that it was, because I had already said yes. The divine said, I have something very important for you in your future that only you will do, and I need you to do it. So I said, yeah, sure, of course. And then they told me, and I was like, no. This princess likes, no, that's not happening. Not going to happen. And then on top of it, because I was still living to a degree in fear. I was allowing the fact that I was gay to make me forget that I also don't mind fist fighting. So, like, I was sitting there, I was just like, I don't want to get into that drama. I don't want no drama. But here I am being asked to be a leader, and I'm okay with being a leader. What kind of leader doesn't deal with drama? And so it was a crash course. And so sometimes you'll be in the situation where you're being called to step into a crash course because your calling is so important and because your life purpose and your life in general has a legacy that you can't see yet. And that's what we're talking about here. Those of you who are affected by all this, let me just be very clear. This is what I've learned. Sorry, I'm talking. I don't use a lot, so there you go. That's confirmation for somebody. I guess you were pausing for anyway. So when it comes to that aspect of overcoming self, understand that there is nothing you will experience on mission worse than the worst part of your own mind. And so a lot of what you're going to encounter is going to test your belief system in yourself. And so where you have, let's say, if you've always led your life thinking from your hoo-ha, then your hoo-ha is going to be your challenge. It's going to be things like relationships and very oriented to your Achilles heel, which for me was the ego. I have a very, very, deflated ego. And so when people, that's the one thing nobody can ever get power on with me. They're like, oh, you're so egoish. And I just look at them and go, you have no idea. Yeah, no power here, which go that way. It doesn't even factor, right? But what I do have is a self-esteem thing where I'm always more I'm understated. I prefer to live my life understated because I just figure, because I know that I'm not better than anybody. You see what I'm saying? So it just depends on when your mind's at. But what I do suffer from is I let people who think that they're big, because I have this thing where I don't tell anybody who I am or what my calling is. I don't say anything like that. I just let people kind of dig their own holes. And so there seems to be a misconception sometimes that you can walk on me until I bite. And then nobody ever wants to be around me again because they're like so traumatized by it. But you don't lead with that. You present who you are, which is I'm a loving person who's very outgoing and I, blah, blah, blah. But don't ever forget that a true leader and courage by definition is an understated quality. It's the lioness, not the lion. It's the mother of the cub that is the most dangerous, not the masculine of the cub. Even though everybody thinks that. No. The feminine is the one who will step in and devour someone who comes near the cub. Right? Because there's an emotional attachment to the relationship. So understand that. So when you're being tested, you're learning not to react unless you absolutely have to, in which case then you do what you got to do. But you always let your intuition guide you. You see what I'm saying? But it was like I was letting the fact that I was gay undermine the fact that I've already been to LA. I grew up here. Second, the divine was watching my back. Like, you have to trust the system. If the divine says to you, you are safe, and you doubt it, and then you blame the divine because you get shot up, but you're the one who doubted that you were safe. You let the devil into your house, not the divine. And so it's super important for you, for all of us, especially if you're in the world right now. Like, let's face it, we're facing our demons, we're facing our fears, and most people are failing miserably, not to be all judgy, but let's face it, you are. I mean, you're running away from a cold, but we're not going to get into that again. You're running from God. And that's what confuses me about this whole scenario, is why are you running from Dad? What have you done? Because I'm running towards God. I'm like running towards that energy and being like, okay, what can I do of service? But that's not like me boasting. That's just my truth. And so for me, sometimes I get in trouble because I look like, I'll give you a perfect imitation to something that I heard earlier today. A woman who I know through this location because I'm in the middle of moving. Well, when you guys see this, I'm already done, but I was in the middle of moving, and this woman is talking to me, and of course, the divine is always with the child of God, right? And so, she's crying, it's someone I know, and she's talking about her boyfriend beat her, and I'm listening to her. Now, backstory. This is the second boyfriend that's done it. And so the divine doesn't know the story yet, but I'm super being there for her and being very empathetic and stuff, and I finally say to her, I go, but Sunshine, isn't this the guy that was like the best friend of the guy that you used to date? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, didn't he beat you? And she's like, yeah, but why would he beat you? Why would they be the same? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just in there going, so you're dating the guy that okay, so the one that used to beat you had a best friend that would watch him beat you, and you were okay with it. I didn't say this to her, but I was thinking in my head, and the divine was listening to what I was thinking, and I was like, and so then you decide to go out with the best friend of that energy, and now you're crying because he beat you. It's fascinating. And so I was really, really like ingrained in her mental space, and I was trying to listen to what she was saying because it was so foreign to me. You know what I mean? And so, I'm all about humanity, so I'm always trying to learn. And so I finally said to her, I said, what makes you like these guys? And she goes, they got big, like joking. She's trying to make a joke, but she didn't realize that in the joke, that sarcasm has a lot of truth in it. So I said, oh, so you're thinking with your hoo-ha. How's that going? And instead, all you hear the divine go, like that. Like, see? And it wasn't like, see, like, is it anything bad? It was my higher self reminding me that you never know how superfluous something can be until you say it in jest. You see what I'm saying? And so, even if she's, obviously that's not the only reason, but that's what she led with. So what did Maya Angelou say? When people introduce themselves, believe them. And so I'm listening to her and I'm like, oh, okay. But don't you think there are others that maybe have a huge ding-dong that you might be more in alignment with? And she's like, yeah, but I mean, he has a car. Oh my God. Okay, so he has a car? Yeah, I mean, I'm homeless. I'm like, well, why don't... And I very cautiously approached it because I was thinking she's about to go lioness on me. But I go, why don't you just get a job? I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? And she goes, why? Men are supposed to stay. Oh my gosh. Like, at that point, even the divine and I were like, oh, okay, we got to go. But what I'm saying is that, and I'm not playing down to her, because I totally, like, that's indoctrination. That is totally indoctrination. It's the subjugation of women, making women believe that some guy's going to come along, like Prince Charles, or Prince Charming, whatever it is, Prince Charles, Prince Charming, that's going to save you. But that's not how this works. If you walk with Christ, you understand that you save yourself. That's what being reborn is, right? So, but you don't know unless you engage people. And so then right next to her is an older lady who just looks at her and, I mean, just to her face goes, you're a stupid bitch. And I just went, yeah, I think that's a pretty good note to end on. I'm going to just go that way. And I just kind of, and I was like, what was I going to say? But the point is that when you think with things, appendages, or materialistically, then it's usually that materialistic thing or that part of you that's going to betray you because you're not getting it. We rise above the chaos, right? And so the reason I gave that really interesting example is because the divine was sharing with me. Sorry, the whiskers. I cut him. I know I look normal, huh? Finally to look like a normal human being again. It's so dehumanizing, that experience to be. I'm grateful for the mission, but I'm glad to see my face back. Anyway, sorry. I caught because again, it's the little thing that plays with my nose right here. Anywho, the point is that it's those things that if you don't engage humanity, then you don't know what you're walking into. So, I am walking and I see another woman who I know for a fact used to be abused by her husband, because I knew her before I went into this mission, and now she's like all about feminism, but she's toxic feminism. She's fighting for superiority, always talking down about men, always putting us down, and forgetting that even though I'm a gay man, I'm still a dude, right? Like, and so she'll sit there and she'll be toxic, and she'll be like, oh, men are so stupid. Oh, I'm so glad I'm over that. Now I don't date nobody. Now I'm not bubble. And I'm listening to her, and I'm now registering what the divine hears on a daily basis. And I got really, really like in my emotions about it, because I was like, you listen to this all day long? And the divine's like, yep. And I go, but it doesn't bother me. I guess I'm just surprised to hear what people truly think, because they're not understanding how they manifest their own destiny. And the divine says, why do you think I asked you to do this? You see, it's that pain that I've survived that makes me relate to everyone. And so, despite how ridiculous the sounding of the verbiage, and no matter where they are on their mountain, I still relate to them on a human scale. And so I never judge them. And I honestly, my reaction is always fascinating. I'm always like totally into their, trying to understand where they're coming from and stuff like that, because sometimes I feel very alien. But remember that I've been through so much that for me, I didn't have an option to be that I don't want to use the word silly, but to be that lost. Like, everything that I tried was purposely stopped in order to make me rise to the occasion of what's about to happen. Whatever that door is, the portal that I just went through when I signed that lease, that is something that divine specifically wants me to do, right? And so those of you being called, have that relationship with other people where you know that your friend is dumbass. Like, you're just like, why did you do that? But you're still going to love them, and you're still going to be there for them. And so that separates you from those who are just faces of something, right? Like, if someone ever offered me to be like involved as a spokesman for UNHCR or NARAL or something that's really, really impactful, they would be getting somebody who has unique experience that makes them qualified for that. That's so unrivaled that not boasting, but that's the truth. Just like you may have been raped by your dad, whatever it is, and makes you so unique and so powerful when you speak to those things, that you are your own sphere, right? And so when you step into these missions, that's what you're being called to do. You're being asked to own your sphere of your experience and present it in a way that people will understand it. But you can't do that if you are more bureaucratic. If you like, because there's leadership that's all good about. I'm all about it. Like, if you want to sit at a desk and push papers, that's great. Like, if you want to be a reporter, that's like, I think Oprah said this best. I think one time she said, she was reading copy, which I just had to learn what that was because I was trying to do it the other day, and it was all right, but I'm just not. I'm more I like to talk to people. So she was talking about how she was like that. She was more about talking to people, and she likes like an audience. She doesn't necessarily like that copy. Some people are amazing readers, and they can make it look like conversational. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not talking down to anybody. It's all encompassing. Like everybody serves a purpose, and everybody has specific things that they're doing. I'm talking about the variation between being called by the divine to step into a spiritual leadership role and then being more of a bureaucrat behind it, right? Because we need both to exist. And there's nothing better than the other. It's just a different perspective. But you can't do that unless you've been through the fire of which your platform is speaking to. So like for me, I'll use myself as an example. Child molestation, child trafficking, child slavery, cults, the wounded warrior, because I grew up in South Central in Compton. Remember when I left Louisiana? So like I know all about gangs and about drive-bys, and I know what it's like to be beaten up and jumped and stuff like that, and I know how to like kick, and the balancing of the divine masculine and feminine, the loss of a mother and father at a very early age, and literally being left orphan, the drug addiction, the sexual addiction, overcoming both, becoming a functioning addict that nobody ever knew, and then walking into a divine purpose with the divine, with no one ever knowing that and people judging and all that stuff, that is so unique to me that something might be there for me on the other end. Like there's an assumption there, and I know that assumptions are like assholes, we all have them, but there is something here that I can't see yet. But the moment that I signed that document, I was free to go into that, and I was now in alignment with that opportunity, right? So whatever it is, it's coming. And so I'm all prepared. But what I'm saying is that that's what mission is. That is why you're being called to mission sometimes, is because you are on the precipice of something fantastic that is part of you walking with the divine in purpose. And if you are in purpose, then you can understand that you are on purpose. And so that thereby you help humanity's purpose. So you align all of these things, but you can't do that if you aren't willing to answer the call. And so I just wanted to be very clear on that before I go into what I'm going to go into. So that's just a little summary of what I wanted to say about the experience, because the wisdom that you gain, I like the gray. I'm trying. You know what my one of my guides called is the other day said, or maybe it was just my higher self, it was my thoughts, but it said Gandalf the Grey is going Gandalf the wife, and I just started giggling like Anderson Cooper. I don't know why, but whenever I get when I'm surprised by my own higher intellect, I for some reason giggle like Anderson Cooper, who is increasingly very attractive. I'm going to do shout-outs later, because there's some amazing people that I got to say thank you for, and companies that have been of service to the homeless population. But let's begin. So, time for the meeting. All right, so let me first begin by saying that those of you who are going on in mission, you have an appeal to the divine that is very unique to you, and you should be very, 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 very happy. But there's a song by Tim McGraw called Be Humble and Kind. And it is my anthem right now. There's a couple, actually. Like Whatever It Takes by Imagine Dragons is my song. It's literally something to divine. It's my song. Actually, there's four. How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, which was from Birth, which is how I Am the Sun, I Am the Air. That song. And then there is a trigger song that made me start studying altogether all of this and spirituality was There Is a House in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun. That one, that triggered my whole my awakening after they tried to shoot me in the back of the head. And then there is Rise by Katy Perry. And then, of course, my ongoing theme, which is Daisies by Katy Perry. How did I get onto this topic? I can't remember the exact reason, but it was very I was going somewhere with it, but I'm not going to edit this. It's going to just read out. And so, yeah, so it was those songs. So it's Whatever It Takes, Rise, Katy Perry. There's two songs by Katy Perry, and then Daisies, right? And so the reason I'm even bringing that up, there was another song that I wanted to mention, which is why I brought it up all together, but let's just keep going. With the Daisies, that's what it was. With the Daisies, there's a line that says, why can't I be the 1 in 7 billion? Why can't it be me? And I just wanted to point that out, that it is you. When you get a call from God, when you walk as a child of God, you are the 1 in 7 billion. It's an honor. And so, no matter the humble and kind, that's what it was. No matter how, thank you, whoever said that. I think it was Natalie. The humble and kind song is what I would say is the quintessential song that keeps you in alignment with Source. Because Be Humble and Kind is one of the most amazing songs that I've ever heard. And it reminds you to say thank you and please and everything, no matter who you become, because you're still the same person. You're born someone and you die someone. It's just the evolution of that entity that grows, right? So understand that you haven't changed. People always say, oh, you changed so much when you... No, that's the truth of that person. It's just that now they have money to express it. But if you are humble and kind, if you receive a call from the divine, then you are going to go through that at a very smaller stage, but a more severe, I would say, and then overcome it and become humble and kind for the rest of your life. Think Nelson Mandela, Oprah, Tyler Perry, Maya Angelou, think Mother Teresa, Princess Diana. Like, these are all humanitarians that you are following in alignment with. You are the new generation of that energy. So it's very important for you to remember that song. I would say, if you get a chance, listen to it. It's by Tim McGraw. Okay. Now, let's talk about the holes that I encountered with the whole adventure into the homeless population. And I want to say, beside humble and kind, I want to say that I want to give a special... I would ask you all if you can do me a favor. I know that everyone comes from religious backgrounds that are varied, but if you can all do me a favor and send a special prayer or a thought of really good grace and energy, positive energy flow to a Miss Cherie over at the Union Rescue Mission, and Mr. Thomas, who I call St. Thomas, who are both beaming examples of what it is to walk in divine alignment with no one ever knowing that you're a special being. Ms. Sherry runs the Union Rescue Mission that I talked about in the last video, and Thomas was the person who immediately came to grab me 2 days or 4 days in and said, hey, I have that opportunity. You said you wanted to volunteer, and got me started. So I want to give a shout out to those two people. And then to begin, let's start with the positive. Subway. I don't know if you guys know this, but Subway donates sandwiches every day that I was there. And Pepsi donates Pepsi Zero or Pepsi products every day to the Union Rescue Mission, and they do it and no one talks about it. So I'm just... big shout out to them. I have firsthand experience, enjoyed your sandwiches every day that I was there, and I'm grateful to you all, and I think that the community and the world at large needs to hear your valiant effort, that what you do for humanity, because most people don't even want to talk to homeless people or even deal with them, but here you are feeding them and giving them soda, which, believe it or not, is really, really important, right? Like, anything that helps us as human beings relate to each other as human beings instead of throwaways is super important. So, big shout out to that. And then I want to give a big shout out to the man who created Charity Water. Now, interestingly, I didn't know who you were until I had finished the mission. Oh, that's what it started all this tangent. But the fact I was going to give a shout out to you. So this man showed up on my feed, because y'all know I have that magic feed, that shows me content that the divine wants me to be aware of. And sure enough, the Charity Water. If you guys haven't seen the video that he did explaining his life and him being called on mission, please immediately go over there and check out. It's called Charity Water, and it's a longer ad. I'm telling you, it was like he and I probably would get along like this, because we both have, obviously different. He's dealing with the water supply over in Africa and basically doing it single-handedly, and he's going to help the world do it, and I'm going to try to befriend him, because I'm curious if he has any advice for people like me who are going to do that with the homeless population and all this other stuff in insane asylums. But he's super important, and I just want you guys to go over, and if you haven't supported Charity Water, I have no affiliation. None of these people know me, but I'm doing what I'm being called to do by my heart. Okay. And then just so you guys know, there's an ad that runs, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman who owned this company, but they do this thing where they match for every pair of socks that you buy, they give socks to the homeless. Okay. Socks single-handedly are the 1 billion of my existence that happened. I would have to wear the same socks every day for like 4 weeks at a time, because there's no laundry facilities and you don't get quarters or anything. So it's very dehumanizing, and so you smell, and it's just like luckily for me, my feet don't normally smell, but I walk so much that can you imagine? It was just not cool. But they are an amazing company. So if you don't know to Google them, their name will pop up. It's not coming to me right now. What the homeless population most need? They need socks, underwear, shoes if you have them, because you get robbed for your shoes. It's like really sad, but let's talk about it. So when you're homeless, No one wants to even let you get water from them because you're too much of a hassle. So you can imagine what it's like to walk all day, all night of your life, and your shoes run out, and then people steal them if they don't have it. So it's like constantly, it just propels crime, essentially. And so it can be like the cheapest $10 shoes. If you just want to drop $10 shoes off, please do so. If you want to drop cigarette butts, and I've said this before, this is controversial, but you can suck it. When it comes to, I'm being graceful too, but I watched as people, when I didn't have any, because, I didn't have any money and nothing, and I was like so grossed out by the idea for like the first 7 months of my life that I was there, that I wouldn't touch them. But there were people who throw away cigarette butts about this big, so the butt's here, and it's about this much cigarette on there, and they just toss it aside. And then here are thousands of, well, actually millions of worldwide, that would kill for those cigarette butts, because they're going around just picking up this much left just to have a drag, because they don't even get that, right? So it's like being in purgatory. You can't do this, you can't do that, but you're not even looked at. And so if you're somebody who's young and you want to do something really progressive, then I would be interested in working with a lot of people if you want to do something where we could like do cigarette butts, because you guys don't know that if you don't have to smoke that cigarette butt, fun fact, I learned this the hard way. And if you don't want to do that, because like a disease and stuff like that, all you do is you take the tobacco that's inside a cigarette and you release it onto your hand or onto a flat surface, and then you grab a receipt that looks like this, one of the paper ones that has not any ink or anything bad or toxic on the back, and you roll it into it and you make your own cigarette, and so you're not smoking after anybody per se. And I don't want to hear any bitching and moaning about, oh well, that's nasty because of, you're smoking after someone that has cyanide in it. People, they'll be all right. And just so you guys know, this is a thing about, I don't do this, but I learned this on the streets of LA. Filters for cigarettes that have not been smoked can be used to help people have clean needle use. Fun fact. I don't know if you guys know that, and I'm not sure the government wants me to say that, but if you take this and you inject or you pull like toxins or something through the needle, it will take the debris out, and it allows the heroin, I've never done heroin, but I watched it happen, and it pulls all of the toxicity here into the sponge, and they get a pure pull. So the only danger that I learned from this, from what I researched, is that you can get cotton, and there's an infection that comes with it, but you can survive it. The point is that you can survive that, but most people can't survive if you get like a piece of something dangerous into your bloodstream. Not that I'm promoting drug use, but I had used it as an example. I found it, and I was like, oh, I think the divine wants me to talk about it. So understand that while we make everything illegal, even though everything can be bought pharmaceutically, until we make it legal, this little thing right here on a cigarette butt is not a throwaway thing to everybody. Like I said, to someone who, for most society, change, you don't like change unless you're homeless, in which case you're all about change, because you can buy stuff with that change. You can make a difference with that change. So there you go. So that's on that. So just so you know, if you're ever in a situation where you're being called with the homeless population, you smoke cigarettes, and you know you're not going to get any money because the divine's not about it, take the cigarette, the ones you find like this, take out the tobacco inside onto your hand or something, roll it, and you can smoke that, and it's probably healthier for you. It has no cyanide in it. And then this, I'm just showing you because I want you guys in America specifically, because a lot of the world is already ahead of us on this. They're already doing things like Canada legalize the use of people who help. We really should consider it, because this is what they're using. And it's a lot safer than just trying to pull, because like they don't even have, some of them can't even get their clean needles, so they're using other, like it hurts your heart unless you have stepped into mission and you're doing something about it. So I'm doing something about it. Okay. So the next thing I want to say is, so socks, underwear, and shoes, and t-shirts. And here's why t-shirts. It's super frickin' hot. And most of them have their stuff rummaged when they're not there. Like, you don't want to carry, like, you end up being robbed a lot. And so, like, can you imagine not having anything and then people stealing your shit? So it's a constant stream of misery upon misery upon misery. So, okay, enough about that. So all of you know how to do that. If you have an opportunity to have a little bit of money, just think about supporting these different charities to deal with the homeless. I know that a lot of people don't even want to look at them. They're like, oh, well, they ruined their life. Well, I hate to break it to you, but most of you, thanks to COVID, your life is not exactly going on par. So you're like this close to yourselves. So cautious what throws you throw here. But we're not going to talk about the negative. We're not going to talk about that part. So what I wanted to talk about with this, the plight of the homeless, is this. And I've mentioned it in an article piece of mine, but did you know that when you sign up for food stamps as a homeless person, you don't automatically get hot meals? In fact, you are forbidden, I don't know why I keep saying instead of just saying forbidden, but you're forbidden from getting hot meals. So like meals that are hot, like a hot dog that's in a warming thing, you can't buy. Or like, you know, when you go to and you get chicken at a grocery store and they have the one that's already made, you can't buy that. It has to be cold or it has to be canned, and you can't. So here's my question to society. I get that you're going to give hot meals to like single moms, but why not the homeless? They have no microwaves, they have no homes, they have no shoes. Why are you denying them automatic hot meals? Is it because of what I suspect, which is you rather just not have them in your fast food restaurant, or you rather keep them away from the general population, so you make them only go to like liquor stores? Is that the point? Because that's typically the only people accepting EBT. That, you know what I mean? Like, cautious guys. Like, it was really, really, that hurt my heart. That was really sad, because I was like, they can't get hot meals ever. I don't understand how that's not even an automatic thing. Also, if you are qualified, I have my list here. So it's 2 pages, by the way, but we're not going to go through all of it. I rewrote it. But like I'm telling you, I would love to work with, like, you know, humanitarian efforts. But okay, so, but I'm, you know, we're doing our own venture too. But it's all exciting stuff. But we got to wait for the connecting planes to arrive and all that stuff, so to speak. If you get EBT, which is the food stamps in California, why aren't you automatically assigned general relief? For the year that I was on mission, not once was I able to get unemployment or general relief because of the whole COVID thing. So my question is, when I finally, it took 8 months to get my EBT, because that was one of the many holes that came through this whole thing, was the fact that there was no one staffing these agencies that used to help. So why didn't I automatically get general relief? If you are physically at a transitional house or any place that has a case manager, they are verifying that you are homeless, so you should automatically be qualified for general relief or unemployment, whichever. So why isn't that happening? That's not a question. It's more of a statement, to be honest with you. Make that happen. I don't understand that part. Then the bathroom situation. Okay, let me be very clear on this. Most of them are sleeping on, like in Skid Row, are sleeping on mats or blankets on the ground and concrete, exposed to the entire world, and on rainy days you don't even want to know what's going down. Why don't they have better bathrooms and more of them in Skid Row? I mean, you already are treating them like trash. So how is the street going to look any less or better if you have less porta potties? Wouldn't that make it look better? And let me tell you something. I'm from New Orleans, and I've been bartending there for almost a decade, and I'm from there on top of it. You are used to lines of porta potties, and nobody minds. Nobody cares, because at least they're not being dehumanized and making crap on the goddamn floor. Why? Why aren't you doing more porta potties? There's 3 alchemy stations where there are people that will monitor the bathrooms. One's on Los Angeles Avenue, one's on there's 3 of them. I can't remember the exact streets, but they're like one every 4 or so blocks from each other, except in Skid Row there's only 2. And then porta potties, but they're so sporadic. There's like one every like I don't know, half a mile from each other. Why? You have dozens and thousands of people there. Alright, now next to the whole thing, the restaurant situation. Okay. During COVID, I guess we can go straight into COVID. Am I done with the homeless plight for itself? Oh no. With the homeless situation, I'm going to ask this. Why is there not more free laundry facilities on Skid Row and in downtown areas throughout the country and around the world that actually allow people to line up? There's only one on San Pedro that I found, which allowed you to do laundry. There's only 3 fucking washers and 3 dryers for the entire population to do their laundry. And there's only 1 public showers that I found. I'm sorry. There's all those empty buildings. Nobody wants to be down there, and you're throwing them away anyway. What would be the difference if you actually gave people jobs to man those places, keep it safe and sterile, and then you would have a better economy, and they would have a place that they wouldn't smell, and maybe you might let them buy hot fucking meals instead of throwing them away and treating them like shit. I'm being told to pull back a little bit. Okay. My higher self is trying to make me graceful. Oh, and here's the thing. People confuse me as being out there because I rely on my intuition and on God. That's not out there. That is a child of God. So be respectful of the fact that when I speak of someone, I'm talking about God. I'm not talking about another voice. I'm not talking about anything weird. I'm talking about who you're from, your higher self, speaking to me as my higher self. Don't get it twisted. I don't know who that's to, but just let's keep it real here. When it comes to the laundry, if you're going to then not have enough of those locations to do showers and stuff, why not give them quarters? It's fascinating to me that we don't aid them in anything that makes them feel human. If anything, we penalize them more and more and more. They can't get hot meals, they can't get shoes, they can't get clothes, they're not allowed to go to the bathroom anywhere anymore. So they go on the streets. We don't give them toilet paper because there's a shortage, even though we're deforesting the entire fucking planet. But okay, we're going to digress for that moment. And then we don't allow them to shower, and we don't allow them to wash their clothes. These are not hard solutions. These are really easy things to do. All those buildings are empty because nobody wants to be down there. Because we're not doing anything about it. We're trying to get rid of them and throw them in jail and all of the wrong indications because everybody's too fucking lazy to do it. You don't want to do it? Hand it to me. I'll get it done. Don't worry about it. And there's a lot of people who are going to see this video and are going to step up and they're going to do it too because we're tired of seeing people be thrown away like savages because they're not the savage ones. They actually were there for each other, and they protect each other, whereas the rest of you all ran for the fucking hills when this whole COVID thing happened. So let's not get it twisted. Truth of truth is, for the divine, they did the right thing. Y'all didn't. A lot of people ran and just protected themselves, and that's very important for you to understand. So why don't we start working together? Because you're going to learn a lot from the homeless population. I'm just telling y'all right now, if any of you ever had the balls to step into mission and go down and deal with the homeless population, because y'all like to say deal with the homeless population. As someone who's actually part of the homeless population, I'm just going to say we love to hear that so much. But the point is, these are small, trivial little things that we could do to immediately make their lives better. If you want to talk about long-term, why not do a program for all of you big spenders? And so I want to talk to the guy who created Charity Water. I wonder what he would, if he has any advice to do this. But why don't you start raising money for tents for these wonderful people? Why don't we start looking at vacant lots that no one's using that has land that we could make tent cities in if we have to? But rather than that, if we have programs and fellowships that we create for people who are willing to step up and to face their demons and rise above it, then why don't we start trying to get trailers and creating trailer parks that are, there's all these solutions that are there. And you can argue and, this can't work. I don't deal with the impossible. I'm impossible. You're impossible. Everybody's fucking impossible. We're all here though. So there's no excuse to not try these things. Unless you're just corrupt and you don't want to do anything about it, and you just want to pocket the money, $500 on a hammer. Don't think we don't see you. Anyway, that's that. So, those are the holes that I really, really wanted to speak to after having spent that much time on mission. And now that I'm done and I'm going to be doing other stuff, this experience will never leave me. And it's part of what I'll be doing in my life, but it's not the only thing. I still have to do so much other stuff. But I'm waiting for people who see this and understand that I'm dead serious. We can change this. This is not complicated. This is a worldwide phenomenon. This is something so... We're surprised that we're facing judgment, yet the stuff that I just listed isn't even hard to do. It just takes somebody to say it. Hi. Now, what are we going to do about it? Looking right at y'all, whoever you are. Are you going to help, or are you just going to pass on this? Or are you just going to look at me and go, oh, he's so funny. Or are you going to listen and actually trust somebody who actually walked the path? It makes a big difference because where I'm currently going, I need help. We need help. It's not like I'm doing this by myself. The Divine has a lot of us out here working to help us all as a collective rise. And so if you're interested, I mean, KAHMOOS is my email at msn.com or 818-594-5339. I think that's correct. I have to look at my phone. It's a government phone. 984-5339. Yeah, I believe that's correct. I'll put it in the information below. Let's talk about the government phone. Okay. So I don't know if you guys know this about government phones, but they hand them out, and so what's interesting about that whole experience is that we're grateful for it, but I don't know if you, what they do is like they give you the opportunity to buy more money for your phone. And so just imagine you have literally been out on the street corner, not as a hooker, maybe. Well, I mean, if you, I have more power to you if you do it that way, whatever you're doing. But you're making your money the hard way, and you're homeless. And so you finally raise the $35 it costs to get the reload card to just get a little good. Because music makes every soul soothe. And so just imagine how much better the world would be if everyone wore earphones instead of just blasting their fucking music all over the place because it's so disrespectful. And someone actually had the nerve to say, okay, digression. I'm just going to say, if you believe in your freedom to blast music, then I'm going to remind you that I have the freedom to peace. And so the freedom you have is to hear music, which means put your headphones on and let the rest of us have peace. Everybody wins. Okay? But when it comes to music, it really does soothe people. So a lot of homeless people are spending their money on not on drugs or anything bad. They're having to choose between meals and peace because it drowns out the noise of the street and the violence around them. And so they go buy these cards. And the one that I had was Assurance. And an Assurance card, I went once to Target, and Target is very clear on it. They had the card. It was a perfectly valid card. It cost me $35 that I did, I saved to get it so that I could have my peace of mind. And it didn't work. And so I went back to Target, and they don't do refunds. And I mean, that's perfectly normal. It's stated, so it's not like they were dishonest. And I called back, and let me tell you something. American government, guess who answered all of my calls? Jamaican people, or people from other, actually I'm going to say African people, from call centers that aren't even in America. Aren't you our government? Aren't you supposed to be employing our people? And they were so rude, just rude as could be. Yeah. And so the people that have no money and are saving all of what they can get in order to just have a little bit of peace and quiet music to help them through, I lost my $35. Because the second card that the Target gave me in exchange also magically didn't work either. It's a scam. At least it's what's coming across. And Target can verify we were really upset with the fact that they wouldn't help me out. Yeah. Target did the right thing. Government phone. Why are you using call centers in other nations when you are a government agency? Let me guess. You have to save money. So you can buy $500 pairs of hammers or $40,000, toilet paper? I can't remember what it was. The Heritage Foundation, I used to work for an organization that raised money for them. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about COVID. Oh, dear God. Okay. Here are the holes that I see with the whole COVID thing. And so now you guys can, if you're done listening to the other part and you think that I'm full of shit on this other part, this is where you stop. Have a good day. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys listening. I look forward to working with many of you if you're interested in changing the world and doing something for society and helping blah, blah, blah. Now, COVID. Let's talk about it. First and foremost, I said from the very beginning, if you're going to do a test like this, please use your IQ. And I don't want to be rude about this, but I'm really just over it. Because you cannot create a virus like that, have it sanctioned by whatever nation apparently did this anti-bioterrorist thing without an antivirus. So everybody can call bullshit from the beginning. And so that's the first hole that I'm going to poke here. The second hole is the fact that you made it walk across the nation to nation to nation, going down zone by zone by zone, which is a military procedure. So it would go from China. That wasn't gas, I moved. So it went through China, a communist country that is really good about covering its tracks, but apparently here they didn't. It didn't board a plane. It literally went, through Italy, then Italy went down, and then it went through France, and then France went down, and then it went through England, and England went down. Before jumping on the plane, finally, apparently, it's terrified of flying. And then it jumped over the pond, hit New York, then went down New York to the eastern seaboard, then came to Louisiana, and then took 4 days to get across that time zone all the way to California, and then shut California down, where, by the way, it's still hitting the hardest. Why? Because because it's a liberal country, a liberal state. So that's the second big hole. Like, a virus doesn't do that. I don't care who you are. It's just like, it defies all logic. It's like the song Defying Gravity. You're just sitting there going, I love the song, but it doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so the next hole I'm going to poke is this. You cannot run a test like this that violates people's constitutional rights to their bodies without first having turned over Roe v. Wade. So you already have created a whole war thing here that you can't win. Because you can't... The right to our bodies is Roe v. Wade. So we understand that you're going after that, you hypocrite, bureaucratic assholes. We get that that's what you do. But you already screwed yourself over because you went after us and our rights. We now have companies firing us for not wanting to get a 4-month-long vaccine. So you already screwed yourself over. Now I can't wait to sue the hell out of y'all. I just can't wait to sue the fuck out of y'all. Because... what I can understand what the theory was, which was to test the system and to see if everybody would comply and see where you would have problems. But what you did is that you triggered people falsely into acting out, which is another red flag. And so all of a sudden, all of the anger that should have been there, which is what makes you what you've done, enslavement, as opposed to doing a test. If you would have let things flare where they were supposed to flare and done your job of getting the right police and getting the right security and all that stuff in place, instead you broke the law and you made those people trigger, sent them to jail, or put them in worse places like hospitals and insane asylums under false documentation because everybody was so scared to watch what you were doing. Those are crimes against humanity. That is not like a test. You've now violated your own laws. Then, 4 months, really, you're going to really stick to the story that you are releasing a mandatory vaccine onto the world population that only took 4 months to create. And you can guarantee that it's safe, long term. This is how ridiculous you sound to me. See what I'm saying? And I'm trying to be as gracious as I can be, but I'm watching you hurt people, and you're going to turn around at some point now that it's very clear to everybody that you're full of shit. And you're going to say, oh, well, we did this for your good. No, we don't believe you anymore because you have violated laws against humans. The moment that woman was fired in New York for not getting the vaccine, you violated your own law. That is a national American problem now. You can't come back from that. So the best you can do is announce that this is all a big bag of bullshit because now we're just getting through South America. Really? Like, no one's that stupid. And so they're thinking that you think that we are not going to do anything, but what you're forgetting is the fact that we have gone hungry, we have been institutionalized, we have been beaten, abused, our partners are in jail because they were trying to protect their families. Like, you have no idea how bad this is going to get for you guys. And if y'all don't think that at the very least you're all getting fired, you're fucking crazy. Because the world is waking up. I mean, there's no way that we can't. Like I said, none of this makes any logical sense. And the weird part is that you thought that you would get away with it, which is a really bizarre aspect to the story, is you think that humanity is so stupid on a collective level that we wouldn't figure out the fact that this doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't go it would go everywhere at once. It's like a whore who's like busy that night. Her legs are spread. It's going in every direction. It's not like, it didn't make any sense. But now you're violating your own laws. So see, anything that you had protecting yourself is now, you're in trouble. Because now, the moment that a reporter gets out of their own asshole and starts actually doing their job, then they're going to start to investigate. And, they're going to find that with the census, on the year of the census no less, that's the other big red flag, by the way, where you screwed up, is the fact that you did it on a year of census. And so you thought that by making it so that people wouldn't take the census properly, that you could fudge the numbers, but you're forgetting one thing. There are analysts and strategists like me who will literally go, all you got to do is look at the last 5 years and compare the numbers and see if there's a steep decline in other related pre-existing conditions. If there is, and that accounts for the 500,000 that have apparently died, then we know you're even more full of shit. It's like a big, huge hole in the theory here that I just want you to be very clear on. Because you're hurting me and you're hurting a lot of other people, and then you're sending stimulus checks only to those who are, very interestingly, very docile. But you're not sending it to all the homeless. Why? Because they represent freedom. And you're making it look like it's the wealthy who knew about it, because you're making them not have the stimulus either. So you're suppressing all of the middle class and all of the people who are beneath, and you're pretending that you're doing something. But no, see, now we're like really ahead of it, and we're going, you're not doing anything but trying to make more money. Now, here's the weird part. And you're also pitting African Americans against police officers, because you know that's a hot topic, because we got stupid people on both sides doing stupid shit. But what you don't realize is that now you've made it equal, so that no one is not looking at y'all now. And all of us are looking at you going, one reporter. All it takes is one strong, real reporter to do their job right now and to look at the numbers. Because even without the census for this year, we have a historic data, and we know that it wouldn't go down. It would actually go up, right? So there should be a normal flow plus 500,000 additional deaths, not level. You can't hide that fact. I don't care what you fudge or what you do now. It's too late. And then if they do change the information, for those of you who are journalists, all you got to do is go back to papers that were written last year by people who were getting PhDs in these fields and look at the numbers they had and compare them with the numbers that are on file. Because, they can fudge anything. Remember who was just in office. They were controlling what the media said and all that stuff, which is another red flag. And then on top of it, the President of the United States wasn't wearing a mask either. And he, of all people, would be most prone to getting it because of his age. Although he did get it right around election time, which is another big mistake. I'm going to say this again. You are hurting people. And you're not... I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt to really say that I believe the truth is that you're trying to protect humanity, that you sense something is coming and you wanted to make sure that everything that had holes, but you created so many holes that you can't plug them up. You have literally destroyed industries. Just alone, you owe Louisiana an entire, once you get rid of that bitch Cantrell. I'm just going to put that out there. I know that's very low vibration, but no, she needs to go. Anyway, you owe that entire state a year's worth of industry-related hospitality finances. The entire state relies on that money alone. You have completely committed crimes against that entire state. And I'm from there, and I can tell you firsthand what you did. So whatever the intention was that you had behind running this test failed because you forgot the rule number one. If you were doing it to help humanity, then you weren't supposed to sacrifice humanity to get it. That's the truth of the situation. You have, in trying to protect humanity, committed crimes against all of humanity. We have people getting hurt left and right in different countries. We have people getting hurt here. I saw a fist fight the other day, seriously, break out between somebody who wasn't wearing a mask and someone who was wearing a mask. You are liable for that. You are liable, government, for that. Because you agreed to whoever's ridiculous idea this was to hide the whole child trafficking thing, to go with this whole damn thing. You can't do a simulation without eventually coming clean. And this is the time to do it before it gets any worse. Because now you literally are committing your own crimes against your own laws. And now none of us are ever going to trust you again. Because, well, how can we trust a government that literally broke their own laws by allowing people to be mandatorily asked, in order to keep employment, that they have to put something in their body that was only 4 months in making? And of course, the truth is that it was longer than that. But until you say that truth, then we have to go with what is being said, which is it's only took 4 months to make this. And so she literally did the smart thing, and she lost her income. And in a world, you are trying to control people. And that's what's coming across. You are suppressive. And you are corrupt. The only way to rectify this is to someone to finally have the balls. You will be protected, let me tell you that right now. Because the people of this world, specifically in America, England, the UK, all of that, and Australia, the whole world is over this. Interestingly, though, wasn't Russia one of the few places that didn't have an outbreak? A really big surprise there. You see what I'm saying, guys? So I understand that you might have been convinced to do this because it was on the behalf of humanity. But you made so many mistakes that actually hurt people that even the organization that created this, whatever this energy is now freaking out. Because there's no way to not know the truth of what I've just said. There's just no way. You know what I mean? And so, and now that we have, all you have to do is look at the statistical data. I know this is running long, but I'm sure that a lot of people are really going to enjoy this because it's the truth of truth, and it's actually on behalf of humanity. I'm trying to help here. And I know that people are going to get all mad at me and triggered because they're going to be like, oh, well, me. What about my life? Well, what about everybody else's life? What about the children's life? I mean, that's the biggest red flag of all. Come on, humanity. Of all of our population, the children are the ones that we sacrificed by not making them put on those masks. And the people that have the most susceptibility to this virus are asked not to wear it because they can't breathe. See what I'm saying? We're being duped, and not even in an intellectual way, in a very sloppy way. And I think what my concern is now is that now we're getting to the point of war amongst the citizenry because you are still making us. You're trying to control us and enslave the race. And I know the government's can hear me. And if you think I'm full of shit, why don't you guys do what you love to do? Naysayers love to prove people wrong. Prove me wrong. Bring me the numbers. Actually, don't do it to me. Do it publicly. Have the balls to stand behind your conviction, because I'm doing it. And I know it's risky as fuck, but bring the numbers, and I'll bring the numbers. And we're going to compare how many people naturally die every year leading up to this from diabetes, cancer, and all of the different diseases. And we're going to compare it against the numbers of how many people worldwide have died this year, and especially in America, because it's one where we keep that I can tell that has a lot of records. And unless there is a 500,000 surplus spike between their numbers, then this is a big bag of bullshit. And get ready for it, because it's going to be a backlash that you deserve, and you know it. And that's what's so weird to me, is that I know that you did this for the right reasons, but why are you still letting it go on? Because you are now looking like you are trying to enslave an entire race, and the governments must be aware of it. What have you guys gotten into that would make you hurt your own friends and family, and then look at them in the face and say it's for your own good? What would make rational doctors agree to this? Is it the fact that there's a meteor coming, or there's an earthquake, or there's a pandemic? And so you're making it worse, and you're making it so prolonged and deadly for people and suffering so much before the incident happens. So so now you've just made it an extraordinarily long. You can't come out smelling like roses out of this scenario. And it took somebody who literally was on the outside. That's why the divine wanted me out of the way. He didn't want me in the fray. That's why this was 3 missions in 1. It was because I was able to observe from a place of non-fear. People are dying, but they were dying from other stuff. And I guess what bothers me is the dishonesty to it all. If it's not the other word, if we're only allowed to refer to it as a pandemic, then you shouldn't be cremating the bodies. That's another red flag. Then it is the other word. So then why wouldn't you say the other? You see what I'm saying? So all of these things, just, I don't know who put this plan together, but they need to get fired. Next time y'all call me, because it's just sloppy. And I guess the only reason I'm even involved in it is because of the fact not only am I watching people getting hurt, but you've actually got the churches involved. And see, that's where the divine is not. See, church doesn't involve themselves in politics. So, where they were supposed to be protecting and serving humanity and being there for them and rejoicing that they might be going home to their Heavenly Father, they are not. And so that's not something that they're going to get back. That is their own undoing. That's why Leonardo da Vinci painted the painting where the churches fell. It's because of their own hands, not anybody else's. You can't stand in the light of God and suppress your people. You can't stand in the light of God and have all that money and not donated billions of dollars to help humanity. You can't stand in the light of God while housing child molesters who prey on the children of your people. You can't stand in the light of God and say to them that you do as they say, don't ask any questions, when you are representing the house of God, where is the Heavenly Father, where they are all going home to them. You rejoice in that journey. You don't stop it. That's it for me, guys. I hope you guys have a great night. I hope you found this very informative. My name is Arevalo, and I am out of here. I don't know where I'm going next, but it should be fun. I really enjoyed my mission. I've learned so much, and I know that the world is going through so much right now. But those of you who are going on mission right now should be so honored. You are better than blessed. You walk in alignment with the divine every day of your life, and the entire mission you get to spend it talking to God. UNHCR, Subway, all of these wonderful charity organizations, Charity Water, keep going. We got to, people like us got to stick together. It's an hour and 20 minutes. If you need me, look at the number down below. That's the best way to get a hold of me because I'm really unreliable on the internet. So go ahead and call me. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Anyone who's interested in working with me, please let me know. I am available now. I'm done with my mission. So I am in my new place, and I'm looking for employment because I want to do something. Preferably doing with humanity and with humanitarian effort. That's it for me, guys. I will let you guys know all the wonderful announcements that are to come. I just don't know what they are yet. God bless.